Hello guys, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back once again to my podcast of inspiring story. I think yesterday's episode was just phenomenal. Dr. Annie is just amazing. Every time she comes to my podcast, I just have an outpour of messages and questions. Uh, I will try to bring her back again. I know a lot of you wanted me to ask her to come back again. This time, you wanted to do a question answer session with her. Uh, Today, my guest is coming from. His name is David. And he's a very good friend of mine, and today he'll be joining us and he'll be speaking his truth. He wants to come forward and share his personal journey about narcissistic abuse. I'm super thrilled and excited to have him. It's always really exciting and inspiring, actually not exciting, but it's really inspiring when people reach out to me and they say, hey, we want to come to your podcast and we want to break our silence. We want to speak our truth and tell you what we're going through. Guys, it takes massive courage to come on a platform and tell the reality, your whole truth, your whole story. And today, one of my guests, David, is going to be doing the same thing. He has a story he wants to share with the world, not because he has a story, but he said to me that if my story can change someone's life, and if I can give hope to someone through my story, then I'm willing to share that. And I applaud him for that. Guys, I'm just feeling a bit low today, so do excuse me if I fall off. On that note, I would like to bring on my guest and start our conversation. Let's hear his story. Let's see how he survived and how he's thriving right now. I don't see him in the chat box, so I would have to send him a message. Just a second, guys. Alrighty. Just waiting for him to come on board there. I've sent him, and I'm just gonna wait for him to hop on and we will start our conversation. Just give me a few seconds. Guys, I want you to how about you if you were on my podcast yesterday, let's talk about that. Please share in the comment sections. What did you like the most about yesterday's podcast? And why have you been requesting me right after the podcast to bring Dr. Annie back? I know she's phenomenal and she has a lot of knowledge around the topic, but yeah, she is amazing. And she always adds so much value to every conversation, and she makes sure that every person is validated through their story. She has come to my podcast. This was actually her fourth or fifth podcast with me, and it has always been so helpful for reaching out to people, to connecting with them, to making them really understand what they're going through, how emotional abuse is so harmful for you. And especially where I'm at, the culture I live in, guys, it's so essential for people, especially women, to really understand that abuse is abuse and there's nothing wrong with you. I was talking to a couple of clients today, and surprisingly they had the same question, and that I deserved it. Guys, you don't deserve the abuse. Absolutely not. Emotional abuse is so damaging. It just kills you slowly, and nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves that. Somebody's saying something, everything you said was so true. It's bad for everyone. It is bad. It's actually bad. I thought before I came on social media, I thought I was the only one suffering. And this was an issue at my side because of my culture. But sadly, once I connected with people, women and men both are suffering globally. Uh, through emotional abuse, and there's so many things that stem from where this stems. Actually, I think it's cultural pressures. It's lack of validation when we were kids. It's social media. It's uh, it's TV. There's so many things that form our understandings around relationships, and we start, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, we start to think that they are our reality, and this is the way we're supposed to be, later to find out that this is not true. Guys, my guest is, I'm going to bring him live, but before I do, please, if you're listening, if you're going through an emotional abusive relationship, please hear me out. I want you to hear me out. You do not deserve this. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. So please do not live around the shame and guilt that you deserve this. You don't deserve this. You are worthy, you're enough, and you're lovable. Uh, Let me bring on my guest and we can start our conversation for today. I'm just connecting with him. Just give me a few seconds. Hi there.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you, David?
Good. Am I right side up?
Yes.
Okay.
You gotta. Can you change the? Yes, this
Is
way.
that better?
There.
Okay, yeah.
There we go. All right, David. I did do a little introduction about you, but I would be happy if you did a little self-introduction for the audience, please.
Okay. Well, I'm David. David Chrisman. I'm from Overland Park area. Uh, Hang on one moment. Get my. There we go. I'm happy to be here, and Marisha invited me to just share my story. Um, it's a simple story. Do you want me to just go ahead and dive in?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead,
Okay.
David.
Okay. I grew up in the Midwestern in Kansas, and grew up in a family that with four different personalities: my big brother, my mom, and my dad. And my mom and dad were just completely, they grew apart. They were just different people. Um, there were a lot of things that happened. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. There was some abuse that I experienced in grade school, junior high, and in high school. It uh, it led me to being closed off, almost always in a defensive mode. And
David,
it,
when you say, sorry, I'm stopping you there. When you say that you experience a lot of abuse, was that was
what
that
kind?
abuse coming from your family or was it
Yeah,
coming from somewhere else?
some of it was physical, some of it was physical and verbal, mental, and
Mm,
it was from grandparents on down to a parent. I don't want to give away the name or gender. Um,
mm,
I didn't see it until recently. Fast forward through time, uh, 2 years ago, um, I was I was married, and I was pretty much a stay-at-home dad for about 4 or 5 years. And there was some incidents that happened, some life stressors, if you will. Uh, In-laws moved in with other people and um, did not move out. They knew they needed to move out within a month or so, but did not. And so that contributed to some of the stress. And there was a stranger in the household,
mm.
and it was a male. I didn't know how. So it led me to be sleepless at night, wondering what's going on, and all that plus the exhaustion, and I coped by drinking, and that led to some. sharp disagreements with the in-laws and some arguments and fights. So I moved out immediately.
David, I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
You said that you said that you coped it with drinking. Did you feel in those times that you could not express yourself, or could not communicate
Hmm.
properly? So feeling that the emotions were getting suppressed, that led you to the only outlet was to just have alcohol and deal with it that way.
Yes, exactly. Now
Okay.
going back to my childhood enough, this parent was a good parent, but appeared to be, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but this parent was different at home than out in public. And then
Mm.
by the time my big brother was out of the house, it was just her and I, and um, there was some friction, and I never could figure it out until recently. I happened to run across a YouTube video on narcissism, and a lot of times people end up marrying a person that's similar to their parents.
Mm.
And I end up, and I didn't realize this, I married someone that was similar to my parent, and in fact, those two don't really get along. And it dawned on me when I looked at the YouTube video, I thought, well, my goodness, I never heard about men being on the other side of being abused by a narcissist. Um, and there were times that I thought, wow, it explains a lot of what happened, and it explained why I carried so much anger, because there was a lot of friction, there was a lot of manipulation, coercion, a lot of ultimatums, and I thought it was just because my big brother was wild and he was different. He went on his own different way, but I I realized that, wow, um, things like, for example, you may or may not heard of the term gaslighting.
Yes.
It's I talked to my ex, and I mentioned that we need to talk about our marriage, because it was rocky, and I think we need to go to couples counseling again. We went to one 4 years prior, and my ex just fell apart in front of the counselor. And when we left, she was different. She just
Mm.
came cold, and I thought that was odd. But then we decided to have children, and I stayed in it for the children, which was a mistake. And at this point, I realized that, okay, I need to get out of the marriage because of the similarities that I saw. Uh, my parents' parent, there was narcissism in my parents' father. And it didn't occur to me that this was modeled for my parent, and it was modeled for me. So a lot of what I did was the opposite of what my parent was doing, and I tried to be so good. I was doing the best I can in school. For example, if I got 3 A's and a B, my parent would say, well, you should have gotten an A if you worked that hard. And the criticism just kept creeping in.
You were never enough. Whatever you did
Yes,
was never enough.
yes, and I felt like I was never enough. And in high
Mm.
school and college, I had suicide attempts, just because I felt like. And then it occurred to me last year or so that, okay, this has a psychological impact on an individual, which can be harmful over time.
Mm.
And everybody has a certain degree of narcissism, either a tiny
Yeah.
degree or even in spades. So I was exposed to two individuals that had it in a great amount. So I've been going to support groups, and been doing a lot of studying and reading. And in the future, I want to help out other men who've been through the same situation. Because one guy did approach me a long time ago and was talking about having been abused, and it didn't click. So sometimes it just takes time to open up the eyes and see what's really happening.
Yeah, absolutely. David, I wanted to ask you a few questions now. Thank you so much, first of all, for sharing your
Sure.
story.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, absolutely. David, you said that you went on and you saw a YouTube video. I want to come back to that point. Were you looking for something, what you were suffering, and that led you to finding that you were in a narcissistic relationship, or
Mm-hmm.
was it just random that it showed up?
Mm-hmm. Well, are you referring to the spouse's friends
No,
or?
I'm talking about what led you to the YouTube video? Did you do a search? How did the word
Oh,
narcissism come to your uh,
that's a good
awareness?
question. I was at my parents' house. I was living with my parents, and I was just thinking, and I something about narcissism stuck out. So I looked it up in the Webster's dictionary, and then I looked it up in the medical dictionary in the DSM-5, like a counselor's psychiatrist manual, and I looked it up, and it talked about the frequency and all the symptoms. And then I went into just looking on YouTube, just looking up videos on,
Okay.
and boom, I came to one, and this person described what I was going through to a T. Um, and I thought, oh my goodness. And then I resisted that my parent actually contributed to the harm. May not have realized it. I don't think my parent was modeling the other parent, the grandfather, to the
I know
point where it was
you
ingrained.
did you were trying to cover up, like maybe my parents not like that, maybe
Mm-hmm.
we all do that. Victim just wants
Mm-hmm.
not to see the reality. We want to
Right.
cover up, like empaths do. uh, and I totally understand, because I know that when I did I searched up, for me, I searched up why do marriages not work out, and reading went to emotional abuse. And I was like, interesting, what's emotional abuse? Never heard that before. Read on to that, and then through that it led me to narcissism. And I was like, what's that word? I've never heard it, don't know what it means. That's how I found through Google
Mm-hmm.
what basically narcissism is. And then, of course, like you said, reading and educating myself on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then saying, okay, this makes sense. Okay, this is what I've been dealing with. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
no, maybe not. No, they're not that bad. And you're stuck in there where you want to accept it, but you don't want to accept it as well, because when you're reading, there's an overwhelming of information out there.
Mm-hmm.
David, you also mentioned that I had caged anger inside of me. I want you to talk more about that. Do you think as a kid your emotions were suppressed and you just had bottled up all your emotions growing up, and that led you uh, to choose the life partner as well?
I think it was to an extent because I modeled my father, and
Mm,
he tended to close off with my
mhm,
mother, and my mother tended to argue, and it was to the point where she gets angrier and angrier, and then he would shut down. So I saw that
mm,
dynamics. Um,
mm,
as a kid, I didn't know any better, so I was afraid to say something. You know, I had one or two teachers ask me if everything's okay at home, because I'd be out in recess, and I'd be sitting on the bench while the others are playing, and this when I was just exhausted from what I saw at home, and then with my severe hearing loss, trying to be fit in socially with the hearing world, but not in the deaf world. So, I'm going off point. Yes, I did feel suppressed because I was afraid I'd be uh, not ostracized, but criticized as soon as I got
mm,
home and my parent was there. There was a lot of these questions. Are you okay? I think something's wrong. And then the line of questioning goes on. It is overwhelming. And as a kid,
yes.
you know, I just shut down like my dad did.
Mm,
And I did go to counseling, and did go to a psychiatrist in college. Psychiatrist said, you know, you're fine. And the counselor did kind of help me with the stresses of college. But it wasn't, the turning point was when in March of this year that my parent and I had really severe argument, a disagreement. And then it occurred to me, yeah, okay, this is where it's coming from. So I got everything out, packed everything up, and moved in with some guys and the roommates. And it's interesting because now I'm seeing the differences are becoming more and more clear. And then I've been learning how to communicate with a narcissist, how to handle certain things. I guess the biggest thing I've taken from that is being a gray rock. If you ever see a rock and you talk to a rock, does it talk back to you? No. If you throw it, it stays where it's at. It's unresponsive to the emotional triggers or the buttons the person pushes. And it's not comfortable sometimes, but it works because that's what I learned from the YouTube is that keep your emotions in check. And if you have spiritual beliefs, pray to the higher power or get yourself centered. I think is one big thing. And I have children. I have 6-year-old twins, fraternal twins, a boy and a girl, and they are doing well. They're handling everything really well. They're starting to see the differences and kind of seeing why, but they're still young.
Wow, wow. So, David, you mentioned that you had some hearing issue. Was that because of the toxic environment you were brought up with that led to having the hearing issue?
The what issue?
The hearing problem. You said that you had a hearing problem.
Well, I was born, yeah, some of that played a part. I was born with a severe hearing loss, and
Okay.
so that contributed to some of it. I know.
I'm actually asking you this because a few years ago, I suffered from hearing, never had any issues, and I couldn't hear people. And I would like, could you speak louder? Could you speak louder? And they're like, do you want us to scream? And I was like, yes, maybe scream because I think I can't hear you. And my mom and dad were concerned and they said, maybe you should go to an ENT. So I did go and he said that we're going to get your hearing test. But one of the questions he asked me, because I had no history or anything, was, have you lately gone through some stress in your life? And I just started laughing there, and that's funny. And I was like, do you want to hear my story? Because I got lots to tell you. And he was like, okay, because that could affect your hearing. That's why I'm asking you. He thought I was being sarcastic because he didn't know me. So I did get the hearing test. The hearing test came out clear. I went back to the doctor and he said, yes, you probably been dealing with a lot of stress. And because of that stress, there was this ringing sound in my ear. And that was going on continuously and I could hear people. So I had to make them literally scream so I could hear them. And the only thing he said was counseling, and just, addressing my emotions and processing what I had been through, processing the trauma. And I did that. And 3 months into my own personal healing, I started hearing people fine. So that is why I wanted to ask, was your story similar to mine or was it something you suffered from before?
I think that's a good observation because I just recently read about the fight or flight response and how it affects our body biologically. What does happen is that I can't remember who mentioned it, but the ear shrinks so that a lot of times the person only hears high pitch or a certain sound. And I definitely support that fact that it could be possible that a lot of the stressors, because I had a lot of head trauma as a baby. I can remember as far back as being hit on the head by a babysitter. I don't know why it happened, and that is the biggest thing that a lot of people who are victims, they wonder why it happened. It was it my fault. What did I do? What can I do better? So there's constantly
shame and guilt,
self-criticism. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
David,
does. Go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead. No, no, you go ahead.
I was going to say that not only ear but the stomach gets tense,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes,
it gets
you
hard
get
to
a
sleep
knot
at
there.
night. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We've been there, right? We know the story, right?
Yes.
We know it too well.
Mm-hmm.
uh, David, I wanted to ask you, being a male, because I know there are a lot of male viewers here listening to your story, still not being able to break their silence. Being a male, was it more challenging for you, especially when you were a kid? Like you said, you were in school sitting on a bench. Of course, when you were a kid, I know it's hard because you're trying to process and understand what's going on. Something is not normal and you're already stressed out. I'm going to go home. It's going to be overwhelming with all the questions. But as you grew older, like in college years and stuff, do you think that it is harder for male members to process the abuse or come forward and speak their story? And how did you in your personal space uh, feel about this topic? Do you think, did you get the support? Do you think no, we had to like hush it?
Mm-hmm. That is a good question, because I do I do believe that from observation, not as many men come forward, uh, so there might be a stigma,
Mm.
especially in culture where the um, the male role is presently dominant more than the
Mm.
female.
Mm.
There's an African tribe where the female is dominant and the male helps clean and cook and do all the domestic stuff. So, yes, I'm still searching and looking. Uh, I'm in the research phase as I'm building up a project to help other men. And one of the things I need to do is actually find them, and
Mm.
just get to know people on Facebook. But there's
Mm.
fewer resources for men. I even called a safe house, and it's predominantly for women. But I told them my situation and made no excuses for my behavior from the incident, but 2 years ago. But I think that my higher power has really presented an opportunity to turn this mess into a message, because someone out there is hurting, and someone out
Yes.
there does not know what path to take. And I want to help those men find a better path than being self-destructive by bad coping skills. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. David, I wanted to share something with you. Last year, when I started my podcast, I did tons and tons of survivor interviews with just women. And I got an outpour, literally an outpour of men reaching out to me and saying that, do you know and are you aware that men also become victims of emotional abuse? And I was honest. I said, no, I laughed. I said, that's very funny. I don't think so.
Mm.
Uh, and then I found so many friends through that, and I had a lot of men come on my podcast like yourself,
Mm.
who shared their story, who told their truth, that they've been victims of abuse. And one of the things, like you said, where there's a lot of male dominance, especially on my side of the world as well. I've talked to clients, and they've said that we are not allowed to express ourselves by being ourselves. Like, okay, we cannot cry, okay, because
Mm.
if we cry, we're not man enough in the home. And they're like, what? That started when they were 10. And then they say, when you're in your teens and you're hanging out with your friends and you're upset, then they said, man it up, be tough, man, we're men. So what I learned was they had to, from a very early age, mask their true selves,
Mm.
mask their authentic selves, because if they showed their emotions, they were not going to, they probably thought they wouldn't be validated, or they won't be man enough, or their masculinity was going to be put on a board, a question, sorry. so
Sure.
so I've seen that a lot with men, because and I know, because I did a research actually on it, and they said that maybe men have suffered more emotional abuse, but because women come forward and speak, more. So the stats show that maybe women are more abused. So
Hmm.
it's really sad to see that men, women, children, adults all go through this. I think it's about time that we awaken, we understand what is causing this. Why are we becoming victims? And how are we going to change the mindset? And I think there are so many things that go with this. Like you said, your father was just, your grandfather, and then your father, and then it was coming down to you. So you saw the patterns. It's like a generational trauma
Hmm.
basically that was coming down. And for you to awaken and say, hey, there's something wrong here, and I'm not going to be part of this, and I'm going to change that. And you taking I can see you taking massive action towards it. So that is what we need to understand where it's stemming from. It's culture, it's childhood trauma, it's social media, it's Hollywood, Bollywood movies. There's so many things. It's our teachers. There's so many things that shape and mold into the behaviors and patterns that we live through, till actually you and me, who have our awakening and understand that something is massively wrong here. What's going on here? uh, David, for people listening right now, especially men who are listening quietly, not being able to come forward with this story, men who cannot understand what's going on, what message would you want to give them?
I think what I want to say is look within, do some self exploration, and never stop asking questions. I ask anybody that's in the psychiatry field or counseling field. I happen to have my master's in social work, so I got a little exposure to narcissism, but not a lot. But I use that the resources from my MSW program to help me realize and educate myself on what's really happening. So try to step back. Don't be hard on yourself. Be graceful to yourself. And men and women are different, but you can take care of you. And I think that's the biggest thing is take care of you. Because if I have the flu, I can't go running around at work. I can't play with my kid because I can spread that. It's kind of the same thing in the mindset. Step back and take care of you, and then some just something will click. And I would just say, don't give up. Don't give up. There's resources out there, and I'm working on getting those out there as well. So don't be angry with yourself, and don't say that it's all your fault. It's not.
Yes, absolutely. Just before you came on the podcast, that is what I was speaking about. I actually, today was one of those days that I got a lot of people reach out to me and say that I was abused and it is my fault. That is what I was talking about. It's never your fault. Nobody needs to treat you that way. You need to know and understand you are enough, you're worthy, and you're lovable. And I know this might seem a bit harsh when I say it, but I think that, like David said, we really need to look within ourselves, because the answer is always within ourselves. We need to understand that where we have to validate that we were abused, and definitely that was not our fault, we also have to see why it happened to us. Mostly it's from low self-esteem, childhood trauma, so many things. That answer for each individual is going to be different. You just have to seek within yourself. Only you hold that control, and only you can take power and change that. Yesterday with Dr. Annie, I did bring up this, that we need to as well let go of the victim mindset. What I meant by that was not to let any person who is a victim of abuse
Mm-hmm.
feel that their abuse is not valid. My whole point is, through my personal journey, I learned to validate everything I went through for myself, and not say it was my fault or I deserved it, because that was the story I was telling myself for years and years, and shaming and feeling guilty and doing that again and again. I had to break and say, you know what? I never deserved this.
Right.
I'm worthy, I'm lovable, I'm enough, and nobody should treat me like that. So I had to not only validate that pain, but
Mm-hmm.
I had to really ask myself this question: why? What did I think in that time that this was okay for me to do? And for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was that I suffered from low self esteem. Now I had to understand where it stemmed from and then work on me. So that is my story. I thought that I lived those 7 years or those 10 years or those 15 years because I said, oh, this is the way it is. I became a victim to the circumstance that I deserve to be abused. It is my fault. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to really push myself out of that mindset and say, you know what? No, I don't deserve this. I am going to take control of my life and I'm going to create the life I deserve. So I just wanted to really share that right now because I thought there was a bit of confusion yesterday with me trying to say that if you're abused, it's not validated. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, you have to validate it by knowing that you were a victim, right? But then where is the next step? That goes a lot more deeper. Uh, Somebody saying something, you should be in your God. But emotional stability, yes, emotional stability is very important. Emotional stability is going to come when you're in tune with your emotions, when you validate your emotions, when you don't shame yourself for feeling certain ways. If you feel like crying, it's okay, cry. You don't need to say, no, I'm not going to cry. Why do I need to cry? That's really funny because I had a client and she's like, I'm such a horrible person. I cry so much. And I was like, if you were laughing the whole day, would you be shaming yourself? No, you won't be. So if you want to have a cry day, have a cry day. Maybe to process something. When
Mm-hmm.
you cry, you'll process how many times, we all know this, how many times do we actually cry and feel better? That means something needed to be processed.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, on that note, David, thank you so much for coming forward and
Thank you.
sharing your story, giving so much hope to so many men, women, all of us out here to know that we can overcome anything. We can take control at any point in our lives. You just did this March, and how many months? 3 months, and look at you. It's phenomenal. Your growth, your transformation. It's amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Guys, I hope that his story was as inspiring to you all as it was to me. On that note, we are going to wrap it up. I'm sending you all so much love. Take care, and I'll be back tomorrow. Bye bye for now.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.